All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Professor Bruno, for being here today. We're super excited, to sit down and talk to you about your history in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm obviously super grateful for you for being a part of my Jiu-Jitsu journey and teaching me and welcoming Mark and I into the Gracie Barra family. And for me, a lot of the questions, and for anybody that's here watching, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box on the side. If we have time, we'll get to them at the end. But my first question, and I get selfish in these interviews because there's things I want to know about you and your history. And one question I always had is, why did you get started in martial arts?
Yeah, I started very young, right? I was only 11. I was already big into sports. My family, it's very much into it, with my father and my mother. My mother was more into swimming. My father was more into surfing. So I was doing both before jiu-jitsu. Swimming was very seriously, like I was part of a team, and I was like doing that like almost like a job. And then at 11, like my father brought me to Carson Gracie at that time. wasn't Barra Gracie. He had two friends already that were black belts, and I guess they talked to him to put me into it. And we went to the school once and watched the class. It was like, oh, do you want to do this? It was like, oh yeah, why not? It was one funny thing though. It's like Carson Grace at that time had two mats, right? The main mat and the small mat. That small mat originally was where Halls Gracie used to teach, right? So at a time, Carson Gracie was actually two schools, like the school by Carson and school by Rolls, and there wasn't a lot of exchange, between them. There was literally two schools in the same location. And then after Halls died, Carlos Gracie took over, and he was teaching for a while on those mats. And then eventually they moved to Barra, right? So I started at Carson, but if I had started a few years before, probably have started with Carlos Gracie, And if I started like a few years before that, I would probably have been Halls Gracie student, It's just funny to give that perspective of it was kind of like the Big Bang, like nowadays there's like teams everywhere, but there was a time that, everybody was training under the same school, Halls Gracie was the teacher of Fábio Gurgel, which now leads Alliance. Nova União was also from those mats at the same time, right? So I stayed at Carson until I was 16, so for about 5 years. And then my family moved to Barra. It was a bit far. Some of you have been to Rio already. Copacabana to Barra, it's far, man. Especially if you're a young kid that relies on public transport, it's a bit like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive or a bus ride, to get there. Then I changed, at 16, I started my journey at Gracie Barra, and that was a one-way ride.
And so, that Gracie Barra, that's the original Gracie Barra in Barra to Tijuca. And what was it like growing up training there and growing up training under Carlinhos?
Yeah, it was very unique, man. It's completely different than things are right now. I was lucky, I guess, that I already had quite a bit of experience in jiu-jitsu. I had been training for 5 years already, even though I was only 16, because it was not a very welcoming place, for beginners. There were no classes, there were no structure at all. It was basically an open mat every day, 6 to 9, you show up and you train. No warm up, no technique, no specific training, and no time limits. You just you go to someone. It's like, hey man, want to roll, and you're just gonna battle that guy until one of you has to stop. And it was intimidating for me a bit, because again, I was 16. There was no kids class. There was an adult class. So there I was on the mats with anybody you can name it, there was a legend already at that time, right? And I was training with them, like I was really on the bottom of the food chain, like I mean, on those mats. So it took me a while to kind of like get known, like by other people, and like get confident and comfortable, right? Like I mean, on like inviting them to train without calling them out. There was the discipline on not the etiquette of not inviting someone higher rank than you to row was I mean, it's very strong. So I mean, I was already a blue belt, so pretty much everybody was higher ranked than me, so I was pretty much there, like just me, like a kid that wants to play, like they just like waiting for someone to invite me. But it didn't take long, like I mean, with time they got to know me, and like it was obvious that I was there for real, was there to stay, and I loved jiu-jitsu, like, and you had to earn the respect, like it wasn't like today that you show up the gym, people just receive you with open doors and they build you from the ground up, right? Like from that time, you really you had to earn your place, like on those mats. Like it was not for everybody.
In terms of Carlos Gracie Jr. and who he is, I know his dad, from what I've read, like was considered, much of like a visionary or like a mystic almost. You hear people say these words like very spiritual. And when you see Carlos Gracie Jr., it's all like, I get the same impression of like Carlos Gracie Jr. Like he seems like to have like almost like a mystic theme about him, and very calm, very cool, very collected. Do you have any like interesting thoughts or comments on Carlos Gracie Jr. and like who he was then, who he is now, and just seeing him change so much throughout the years? It's like the leader of Gracie Barra.
Yeah. Man, he hasn't changed at all. Like I mean, he's literally like the same person, the same routine. Like he eats the same things, he does the same exercise. Like I mean, all the like the I mean, everything that he believed then, like he still believes now. He's very consistent, on his beliefs and the way he chose to live his life, like way back then. Like I mean, everything grew, right? Like I mean, Gracie Barra, Gracie Mag, IBJJF. Like I mean, Carlos Gracie is behind all that, and that never changed. Like he still lived pretty much the same lifestyle as he used to live back then. At the gym, I liked it. Like I actually tried to be the same, tried to have the same presence, like that he had at the gym. As I said, there wasn't any class, like, so he wasn't there like, okay, let's do some push-ups. Here's the technique of the day. It wasn't like that. Like, I mean, he would show up, put a chair, sit there and watch, like, so he would watch everybody roll. And then, and it wasn't going to, usually he wouldn't say anything, but it was crazy, man. Like, it was kind of like a Mona Lisa painting, like wherever you were, if you look at him, you'd have that feeling that he was looking at you, and sometimes there'd be like 50 people in the match, like, man, and every time I would look at him, it was like he was looking at me, it was freaky. And then, I mean, of course, I mean, every time you came to him with questions, like he would answer. He would never like, he would always have time. Like, I mean, he would go to the gym every day religiously. So he was always available, like I mean, but I mean, rarely he would like spot a mistake and he would kind of like, hey man, you did that wrong, like something like that. But it was rare. Like I mean, he was more like, I mean, watching things going, and he knew everything, So I try to be the same thing. I try not to kind of like be too much on top of my students. I want to let them experience, make mistakes, like I mean, try to tweak and engineer their own techniques. And then if they have a problem, I always make sure that, man, you gotta come to me, I won't come to you, because I like that students try to solve a problem before I give them the solution. Like I mean, I think jiu-jitsu, your learning will be much more complete, like if you try the wrong ways before you learn the right way. I know that there's a fear of people acquiring bad habits, but if you train consistently, you won't develop bad habits because jiu-jitsu won't let you. Bad habits don't work, right? Basically, so the mat is your best teacher. So if you're allowed to train, eventually your techniques will gravitate towards the right way of doing things. So that was kind of like the technique aspect of Carlinhos' mentoring. He was also very big on what we did outside the mats. We were like a crew of like young kids, like pretty wild actually, and he had this, I wouldn't say a father figure, like maybe a mentor. Like I can't define it any better than calling him a mentor. He would kind of like let us do whatever we want to do, but like he wouldn't hesitate on giving us some straight talk. Like whenever we kind of like walk out of line. I remember, man, like one thing that he told me that really marked me. I was probably 19, 20. I was like a 2-3-time world champion already. I was doing my medical school, so I was doing sports, being relatively healthy, and then he called me once, and it was pretty rare, right? So he kind of like had those shivers, like every time he called you. And then I sat beside him and said, like, Bruno, you're a bad example to the young students, And I was kind of like shocked, like, like, Carlinhos, what the hell you mean? Like, I'm here every day training, I'm winning tournaments, I'm studying, like, I'll be a doctor soon. Like, what do you mean I'm a bad example? It's like, yeah, you achieve all that, but come weekend, man, you party all the time, and you party way too hard, and I was still puzzled, It's like, but like, I'm handling, man. Like, come weekend, I'm allowed to have some fun also, right? And like, yeah, you kids look at you, and then they see you like partying like crazy, and you still go and win tournaments. They think they can do the same, and not everybody can handle things that well as you do, And I was kind of like, man, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm a 19-year-old, like, you want me to stay at home? But I did, I didn't change much, but we have a responsibility as martial artists, right? Like, we have a responsibility, even if you're not a teacher, right? If you succeed, you're leading the way that people will follow. And that is a big responsibility, like, so you should be careful what you do, what you don't, because even something that works for you might not work for other people, right? So to this day, like, I lead my school. I'm very concerned with the image that I pass it to my students. Right? Of course, I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but I understand, like, that they will try to kind of like mimic, like the things I do. And if there is something that it's not a constructive habit, I try to not make it so public, like, of course, I drink, and, I eat bad food, like, everybody does that, right? But you're not going to see that on my Instagram, like, be eating a McDonald's, like, yeah, you should do that too, like, that's my post-workout food, we see that all the time, right? Fighters do that. They think it's funny, but like, I learned that, you might, maybe there's a kid that is already overweight, and then he's seeing his idol, like, winning the world champion, and then going to eat the McDonald's, and then that kid will think, I can't eat the McDonald's too, like, that kid is already overweight. So anyway, like, this responsibility, like, I grew up having this sense that success, it's not a gift, it's a burden, it's a responsibility, like, you are going to influence people if you succeed in life, so you shouldn't take that for granted, like, you should really be careful,
The next question I have, Bruno, is regarding training, because you were in school to become a doctor, and you were winning the world championships. So you're in school to become a doctor, and you're still winning the world championships. So like, you obviously, have figured out the system and how to be the most efficient in training. What, what can you tell us about that? Because, like, becoming a doctor, first thing is, like, an incredible achievement. Winning the world championships, again, is an incredible achievement, and you've done both. So if you could tell us how you did those things, and how you made the most efficient use of your training time and how you got better while having that full a schedule, like, I'm really interested to hear the answer to that.
I never do quite a good job answering it, but I always get a little better. And the reason why I struggle to answer that question is because it never felt like a burden, you know, it never felt like a sacrifice. Right? Like jiu-jitsu helped me, you know, like, I mean, my routine was pretty simple, you know, like I just go to the university, spend the whole day there, the gym, like spend an hour or so, go back home, study a little more, sleep. Like, I mean, so Monday to Friday, that was my routine. So it wasn't that bad, you know, like, and I needed it. Like, I mean, jiu-jitsu wasn't something that prevented me from becoming a better doctor. You know, like, I mean, it actually helped me to reset and have that kind of like moment for myself at the end of the day. So then next day, when I went to the university to study it again, I was fresh. You know, like, I mean, I never felt that like I had stopped doing the things I loved because of my medical school. And the same way, I never felt that I stopped, like, I mean, having hobbies because I was dedicating myself to my medical school. You know, like, so there was time for both. However, there were a few things that really helped me, right? Like, I mean, which are the things that I'm grateful for as well. Like, I lived 2 blocks from the gym, so there was no time lost commuting. All right. The gym itself didn't have classes, you know, like, so I didn't need to be at the gym at a certain time. So sometimes I would be a bit later, sometimes it would be a bit earlier. There was always people on the mats, so I would just show up, get my training done, go home. All right. Like, I mean, so there wasn't such thing as like me arriving there 30 minutes before class and I had to wait, like wasting my time. Right. So there's no time being wasted. I was living with my parents still, which is something pretty common in Brazil, right? So I didn't have bills to pay. I didn't need to work, like, I mean, to put myself through school. Right? So like there was no time lost on that sense either. I had a lot of friends that started their families very early. Like I didn't, you know, like I didn't have kids to support or anything like that. So those are all things that like take time away from you, you know, like, I mean, and then people that probably would have succeeded as much as I did, didn't, because they devoted their time to other things, you know. So yes, the universe like sort of conspired like to my advantage, and of course I'm not downplaying my achievements, you know, like, I mean, I did my part, and then I worked hard, like, I mean, to do all that, and that was something that I was already pretty used to, you know, like I was probably like 12, 13, and then my routine was just as busy, you know, like I was studying, I mean, every day, obviously. And then I would get home, eat, and then I would kind of like go study English, because it's pretty common in Brazil also, right? I mean, to study English outside school. And then right away I would go to the pool to swim for like 2 hours. And then I would go to the gym to train jiu-jitsu for another hour and a half. So my day was packed from 7 a.m. all the way to 8 p.m. every day, you know? So I was already used to kind of like, I mean, get my day busy. Like, I mean, that's kind of like the strategy that my parents used to get me out of trouble, you know, get me out of the streets. You know, their philosophy was always that keep the kids busy so you keep them out of trouble, you know. So once I was in university, it was actually pretty easy, you know. Like, I mean, I never felt that it was a burden. So, I mean, if I can give some concrete advice, it is that, like, I mean, be grateful for the conditions that are helping you, right? I mean, the tailwinds that are helping you achieve, like, acknowledge them, you know, like, make sure you don't lose them. And don't waste time doing things that are not going to get you anywhere. You know, like, I mean, I wasn't watching TV. I wasn't, like, I mean, hanging out or going for dinner with my friends during the week. I was doing that all the weekend. You know? So during the week, I was very just school, jiu-jitsu. You know, that was all.
That's awesome. So we go from Gracie Barra, you know, you come to Canada, and why don't you take us through, like, because, you know, I know the history loosely, like, coming to Canada, I believe you're still in school, And, if you could tell us a lot about your journey to Canada, your time being a doctor, and
Yeah.
and the choice to leave being a doctor after to pursue jujitsu full time, because I understand it, but also at the same time I don't understand it because I was never a doctor, so I can't say I truly understand.
Yeah, I have from my medical class, like I mean my group that graduated together, there are probably 3 or 4, actually around 5. Like I mean I might be missing some people, but that quit. So it's rare. Like it was 100 people, So out of 100, 5% like quit medicine. So it's not the kind of career that people just let go. Like I mean you just put too much effort into it, like in order to just do something else. But it wasn't planned, like I mean the way things unfolded was like that. I finished my medical school and then I did my residency in Brazil as well. So I came to Canada like to do the research to finish my PhD in Brazil, right? And so they have these like exchange programs. So I enrolled in a PhD program in Brazil. I came to Canada to do the research, and then you go back to Brazil to defend your thesis, right? It's kind of like a sandwich program, it's called. So originally my plan was to be in Montreal for 2 years and then go back to Brazil and live my life there. After those 2 years, I was invited to stay one more, like I mean, to do a postdoc, right? And to continue doing the research that I had been involved on. And then after that, I was invited to stay here as a researcher, as a professor at McGill. So I did one more postdoc in Toronto to kind of get the credentials, to be hired. And then after 4 years in Canada, I was appointed assistant professor at McGill University.
Wow.
So I at that point I was like, okay, that's where I'm gonna live. I had been teaching already at TriStar, like I mean, unofficially, just training, like to get busy. But once I decided that Montreal would be my home, I wanted to have my school. Like I mean, I firmly believe that, like I mean, there is a sort of atmosphere that the jiu-jitsu school should have. You can't just like, I mean, have a cage, and people teaching all kinds of martial arts, and you're there like twice a week, like to teach jiu-jitsu. I don't think that's the kind of thing that grows. So TriStar was great, like I mean, for me was great. I learned so much from those guys teaching them, But there was a lot of people that wanted to train with me, but would not go there because it was too much of a professional place to train, So then I kind of like decided to open my own studio, and originally it was just a hobby, like, okay, I just want a place to train. As long as you pay my bills, it's fine. So for a while it worked well. I was working as a professor during the day, like teaching at my school at night. Pretty much what I was doing while I was doing my medical school. Like I mean, our routine was very similar. But then things started to grow. Like I mean, the number of students continued to grow, and then I had to hire some people, open more classes, So at a time, I was kind of like teaching the morning class, and then going to the university, and then like coming back to teach the noon class and go back to the university, and I come back to teach the night classes, and I'll get home like at 10 p.m. and then like just eat, pass out, repeat, I was putting maybe 14, sometimes 16-hour shifts, and it's hard because something's got to give, like, I mean, I was doing those two things well, but there wasn't time for anything else. I had no social life, right? So it's kind of like, man, like, I mean, I've succeeded in being a doctor, and I succeeded on being a jiu-jitsu guy school owner, but my life sucks, like, I mean, where's the reward, right?
Yeah.
So I had to make the decision, like I can't continue like that, like I mean I had to quit one or the other, and it wasn't easy, it took me a good 2 years, like I mean, to make a decision, but at the end it was one question, like that decided, like I mean, I kind of like, okay, one day I'm gonna retire, right? We all will. What I'm gonna retire from, right? So like, I mean, one day I'm going to retire from being a doctor. Am I going to retire from being a jiu-jitsu teacher? Like, I mean, it's like, I don't think so,
Yeah.
or at least it's gonna take longer. So it's kind of like, okay, like, I mean, if I'm gonna retire earlier from being a doctor, let's do it now. Like, I mean, so then I decided to quit and just take care of this school, like full time. Still wasn't like a retirement, at that time. Like the plan was to be a consultant, like, I mean, a research consultant, right? So I would be like basically a freelancer. I would continue to be involved in research, but without having a formal academic position. That didn't work at all. Like, I mean, as soon as I quit, the school just sucked all my time, as you know well. Any free time you have, the jiu-jitsu school just sucks it from you. And then I just decided to leave jiu-jitsu full time. I don't regret it at all. Like, I mean, I miss some aspects of being a doctor, but there's a lot of bullshit also, like that. I'm glad not to deal with it anymore. That's the short version.
That's a pretty incredible story, pretty amazing story. And how many jiu-jitsu schools and how many black belts, like not an exact number, but like how many GB schools are there now in Montreal surrounding, and how many black belts have been promoted, through the GB ranks since you've been there?
We have an exact number. I keep track of it, so I don't remember the top of my heart. We're around 70, 75 black belts that have been graduated from belts, right? I mean, so a lot of people came as blue, purple, but I graduated them all. We have 8 schools in the greater Montreal area. They've all been from a Gracie Barra lineage in one way or another. Like, I mean, either they've been training with in Montreal all the way, or they came from Brazil. But they all linked like to Gracie Barra in one way or another. Like we never had like a black belt that came and was like, okay, here's the stamp, you're a Gracie Barra guy. Like we don't work that way. You gotta really go through the ranks, like to represent our brand. And yeah, I mean, it's my job has evolved also, right? Like, I mean, as I opened my school, my original job was just being a jiu-jitsu teacher. It was actually pretty easy. Eventually, I had to become a manager of my school, right? Like when you start hiring other people, and then I after the first school was open that wasn't mine, I became sort of like a mentor, like, I mean, for school owners as well. So I see myself now as a teacher in many levels. Like, I mean, I teach beginners, I teach advanced, I teach kids, I teach instructors, I teach managers, and I teach school owners. So I try to see every person that join our school on that path. Like, I mean, and then I mean, it doesn't matter how far they want to take it. I mean, I can guide them all the way through. We have white belts sometimes after 3 months. Is like, I mean, I want to open a school. I was like, man, it's great, but it's early also, like, I mean, let's start by being a good student, like, I mean, once you're a good student, let's make you a good assistant. Once you're a good assistant, we make a good teacher, so there's a step, you're working towards being a school owner, but like, let's take one step at a time.
Yeah, and grow towards it. I know Mark and I are super grateful for your help with us, and I know a lot of you guys who are on this interview right now don't know, but like, if I book a private with Bruno, it's often he makes a lot of time for me, and he'll sit down and eat with me and coach me, and I have all these questions, make sure I'm doing things right, or how to do this or how to do that, and you've helped us a great deal with that as well. Next question I had, and then we'll start to open it up for some of the other people to ask some questions. A lot of people know this, some people don't know this. You gave GSP his black belt. What was it like training GSP and like giving him his black belt? Like, that guy's they say he's the greatest MMA fighter of all time. The GOAT, and you giving him his black belt, like, that's a major deal. And
it was my first.
And you probably had a huge
My first black
impact.
belt.
What's
Yeah.
that?
It was my first black belt.
He was your first black belt.
Yeah.
Wow, so what can you tell us about training him and that experience?
Yeah, it was I mean, I didn't have a school back then, right? Like, I mean, I was teaching at TriStar. I met him when he was a purple belt. It was right after when he fought BJ Penn for the first time. That fight he won, but he got poked in the eye. It was a war. So I met him right after. So how I met him, I was already going to TriStar to teach, to train with my few friends that I had in Montreal, but I didn't know anybody there. We would go like on weird hours and just train. Eventually, Claude Patrick, from you guys probably know him. Like, I mean, he has a school now like around Toronto. He eventually made it to UFC as well. He was training me in Montreal at that time. He reached out to me. You know, it's like, I mean, man, like we just discovered that you were in Montreal. Like, I mean, what the hell? Come here, teach us. You know, a lot of guys, mostly GSP, they were going to New York, like to train at Hansa's. You know, like they were doing like, I mean, road trips to go there, train and come back. And then my friends there, Eagle Halls, like eventually told them, I was like, man, like, you know, you guys are welcome to come here, but there's a dude right there, you know, like, I mean, you guys can train with him as well. So they reach out and it's like, oh, you want to teach us? So it started with like George, Claude, and maybe 2 or 3 other guys, Mike Ricci, that came to me and said like, oh, do you want to teach us? You know, it's like, oh, sure. I had never been a teacher before. I didn't even know, like, I mean, what to charge, you know, just like, man, I don't know. It's just, I mean, pay what you can and let's start, you know. I was just happy, you know, like to have some people that love jiu-jitsu and I could grow. And then that's how it started, you know, like, I mean, I was teaching basically the MMA guys. Some other people would come as well. The class was open for all. And George, man, like he's probably the best athlete that I ever had the chance to work with. You know, I mean, if you watch like those documentaries about like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, like one thing that brings them together that it's common, it's how obsessed they are with the art. And JSP is no different, man. He's obsessed. Like if he goes to a psychologist, he's gonna be diagnosed, you know. And he lives and breathes like martial art. Like, I mean, he doesn't do anything else. If everybody have a chance to read his book, it's very accurate on the way he is. You know, like, I mean, he doesn't have a life outside martial arts. He even says that in his book. You know, like, I mean, it's like all my friends are related to my work. You know, I don't have a life outside that. You know, like, I mean, he wakes up, pack his bag, go train, goes back home, unpack his bag, sleeps. That's his lifestyle. And he's super disciplined, man. Like, I mean, he wants the best of everything. If he's interested in jiu-jitsu, he's going to go for the best. If he wants wrestling, he goes for the best. And he saves no expenses on getting the best for him. He flies Roger Gracie, Braulio Estima, Sean Williams, you know. Like, I mean, if he wants to learn something, he gets the best, flies the guy, pays everything. And then, and he was already doing that at a time that he didn't have a lot of money. You know, he goes to fight. He brings his own chef, like to cook for him. You know, because once he had an infection, then he got diarrhea just before a fight. You know, he's like, okay, never again. So he got a guy like to go there and cook for him. You know, so all those things I don't see anybody doing. You know, like, I mean, the discipline that he has in his training and his obsession to perfection is very unique, you know. And then I was very fortunate to see him grow and help him with that. Of course, I wasn't his only teacher, you know, like, I mean, he continued going to New York. John Danaher, I think probably he should be credited with having the most influence. He's a very important mentor for George. I was training with him a lot. I'm just saying that I don't like to take credit for him. You know, like, I mean, he excelled on his own. I was just a source of knowledge for him, a good partner, and I'm, of course, very proud to have for him the black belt. Sorry, did I miss a question there? Kind of like
yeah, it just froze there in the last second. I think the last thing you said, you were very proud to award him the black belt. Is that the last thing you said there?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, our relationship was very friendly. He's a good friend. We would hang out together a lot outside the gym as well. And then I like to see him as a good training partner. You know, like I learned a lot from him as well. The way we would work, you know, like I mean, how we would share knowledge is that, like I mean, he would let's say do his thing, and then I would give my perspective as a jiu-jitsu guy. You know, I was like, okay, if you put this arm here, I'm gonna get you. You know.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you say like, yeah, but if you do this, I'll punch you in the face. You know, I was like, yeah, you would, you know, because I mean, I don't know any MMA at all, right? So I never tried to tell him what to do. You know, like I mean, I was always kind of like, okay, as a jiu-jitsu guy, this is what I would do, or as a jiu-jitsu guy, that's what I've been waiting for. You know, so don't do that. You know, so and then he would take that piece and then put it on his puzzle, all right, because he was already getting inputs from many people. So I didn't want to say like, oh, okay, you should do this, you should do that, you know. And so just kind of like, okay, here's my contribution, you know, like to your process there, which is kind of like what I do with all my students, you know. Like I kind of like, man, like that's how you should do an armbar. And then some students are very stubborn, you know. They're like, no, that way is working for me. And I was like, I mean, great, man, go for it, you know. Like I mean, maybe either he's gonna come up with something completely new, or you know, he's gonna learn, and then either outcome is great, you know. Like, and so I try not to waste a lot of time trying to convince my students. You know, I let the mat do the work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mark has two questions for you, Bruno. You want to ask your questions, Mark?
Yeah, my first question is in growing up on the Gracie Barra, obviously like the mecca of jiu-jitsu in Rio. Did you feel any like pressure of competition? Did it come naturally to you guys? Like, was there like everybody had to do at least BJJ competition or Vale Tudo and that was it? Or and then were you always like a competitor? Like, was that always in you, or did like Carlinhos kind of like brought it out of you, or you were just you figured out that you're so good that you're like, okay, I'll try this out? Like, how did your first competitions and competitiveness came out into you to become world champion?
Yeah, I brought it from swimming, right? Like I mean, I started swimming when I was like 3-year-old. I think my first competition I was 4, you know, and we were competing so often, right? Like almost every other week there was a competition going on. Right? So it was very professional the way we were being trained, like even at that early young age. And I that brought me a very healthy like relationship with competitions, you know. Because you know you just compete so much, you know. Like I mean, I learned a few things, you know. Like I mean, the first one is that the outcome of one event doesn't define you, all right. Like I mean, so like your legacy will be given after you die, right? Like I mean, so it's a long run. So that taught me that losing the tournament is just a stepping stone towards your next one, all right. Like I mean, and what's going to define you, it's your whole project, right? Which is your life that you're building, you know. So like sometimes I have my students, you know, like I mean, they're white belt, they lost the tournament, they come back to the gym all depressed, you know, like, I think I'm gonna quit, jiu-jitsu not for me. I was like, man, like you have no idea, you know. Like I mean, just that doesn't mean anything. You know, like I mean, I usually tell them after, because if I tell them before, they're probably not gonna be so serious. But just like, look, man, one tournament doesn't mean anything. You know, I mean, just what matters is the end. You know? So that was one thing I learned. The second one is that like you're gonna lose, and you're gonna lose a lot. Like I mean, if you fight, if often in a year, sometimes I would lose 3 to 4 tournaments, and I would become a world champion. You know, I mean, who cares? Like, I mean, if I lost like some local tournament, you know, to a nobody, if I got the world champion at that year, you know, like, yeah, maybe that guy would have bragging rights. You know, so like, yeah, I beat that world champion, but man, I hold the medal, you know. So I never care about losing like smaller tournaments, you know. Like, I mean, I always wanted to win, doesn't matter what, you know. Don't get me wrong, but what matters is at the end of the year, me looking back, reflecting, okay, I won the world champion, I got second in the nationals, you know, and just like, okay, that was a good year, you know. Like I mean, I never care so much about the losses, you know. What I care is like, I mean, how many tournaments I won, you know, like, I mean, so if I won 5 and lost 10, I'm still happy, you know. I find it better than like, oh, I won 1 and I competed 1. Like, you're not better than the guy that won 5, even though he lost 10. Like, I mean, it's a numbers game. It's not MMA, you know. You're not gonna have a record, right? Like, MMA has like, oh, I won 5, you lost 50, man, you suck, you know. But in jiu-jitsu, nobody perceive the tournaments that they lost because they don't matter. You know? Like, I mean, it's like you know, it's just training, right? That you're going through, you know. So like all those things I built through swimming, you know, like that healthy relationship with tournaments. So when I started doing jiu-jitsu, for me, sports, I mean, includes competition. Competition, it's part of the process, you know. Like, I mean, it's a tool to help improve, to give you motivation, to bring a little fun into it, you know. Like, I mean, would help me be more disciplined, especially when I was young. Imagine like try to keep a 16, 17-year-old at home, you know, like just it's not easy, you know. Like, I mean, and if I had a tournament on my horizon, I mean, I would stay home. Like, I mean, as much as I liked, like as I said before, you know, like, I mean, to party and live my life, if I had my tournament, I would stay home, you know. Like, I mean, so for me, like, I mean, having a lot of tournaments in the year, it was a way to kind of like stay focused on my training, right? So that's kind of like how I always used competition. But Gracie Barra wasn't only competition. Like, I mean, there was a strong team, obviously, but there was, man, like a good chunk of people that didn't care about competition at all. And those guys were tough, you know. Like, I mean, so even though they were not focused on competition, the intensity that they were bringing to the training was just as hard, if not more, than we competitors would. Because like nowadays we have this distinction, right? Like, oh, the athletes and the hobbyists, right? Like, and the hobbyists, like they don't go so hard, they don't train as much. Nothing wrong with that, you know. Like, I mean, I consider myself a hobbyist now, you know. But now, before that, there was no distinction, you know. Like, I mean, everybody would train just as hard. Every training round was a war, right? Some people would decide to compete, some people wouldn't, you know. Like, but everybody would train the same.
That's awesome. That's great answers. My second question is, I seen on your Facebook, like you brushed up a little bit about surfing, and I've seen you in the barrel. I think a really cool picture of you surfing, and it's like me and Nick tried surfing like 2 times, and like this is really hard. So like you're really good at jiu-jitsu. You know, you became a doctor, but like with the surfing, like you look really, really good. I don't know anything about surfing, but you don't look like you know, I always knew that the BJJ guys, especially the you know, in Brazil, they either like they surf and they do jiu-jitsu. Like, could you tell us like a little bit about like why is there such a strong connection with? So you have beautiful waves, and you know, why not? But like we always heard of jiu-jitsu guys, you know, train jiu-jitsu, and then after that they go surfing. So I'd like to know like what's the connection there?
Yeah, I mean, one of them you said already, right? Like, I mean, it's right there. You know, like, I mean, jiu-jitsu, Rio is a surf city. We have waves everywhere. You know, like, I mean, you can't be far from the ocean. You know, it doesn't matter where you are. So and the jiu-jitsu lifestyle already gravitates towards outdoor activity as well. All right, like, I mean, so we like that contact with nature. You know, like, I mean, Carlinhos had a habit of doing hikes on the mountain on a weekly basis. You know, so he never surfed, though his son does, so I mean, you train and then you go to the water, you know, like, I mean, it's such a good complement, right, to jiu-jitsu. And it's a sport as well, you know, like, part of the BJJ lifestyle, you know, like, I mean, is to have passions or distractions that are healthy, you know. You're not going to go play poker, you know, and have a cigar and drink whiskey, you know, and call it fun, you know. And just if you can have fun doing things that will improve your health, you know, like indirectly you're helping your jiu-jitsu as well, right? So your downtime, you are also training, right? So like, I mean, I would, another thing about my training back then was like, I never trained on weekends. Like it was Monday to Friday, religiously, you know, I never trained more than 5 times a week. And I never trained Saturday and Sunday. But I would surf every weekend, man. You know, like, I mean, I would spend maybe like 5-6 hours in the water. Like, I mean, on Saturday, and I'm going to repeat that on Sunday, especially if the waves are good, you know. So while people were resting, you know, like, I mean, I would put in like 5-6 hours, you know, of exercise, right? So, and then maybe Monday I'll be back at the gym training, you know. So yeah, probably I wouldn't train during the week as much as someone else, you know, like, I mean, I would put 1 hour, 1 hour and a half at the gym, but I wasn't doing like weights or running or anything like that. But come weekend, man, I would make up for it, you know, and it never felt like an exercise, man. That was like 100% fun, you know. Also, from more a technical perspective, you know, jiu-jitsu is not very balanced in the way you use your body, right? Like, I mean, it's very like hug and hold. You know, like, I mean, so we tend to shrug your shoulders forward. Like, I mean, work a lot your front muscle groups, you know. And so you start having some vicious postures, like, I mean, in the body. So it's very good for you to complement your overall training with an activity that balances it all, right? So anything that, like, I mean, opens your shoulders and works your back muscles, you know, it's great. And jiu-jitsu, surfing is that, you know, like, I mean, there's a lot of paddling, you know, like, it's very fluid, you know, like, so it helps a bit to loosen up, much like yoga or swimming, you know, like things like that. So that's another advice that I give to my students, you know, like, I mean, try to look for an exercise that it's opposite of the muscle work for jiu-jitsu, you know. So yeah, so I think that's kind of like how it got style of jiu-jitsu. It's a sport that complements well, like, I mean, the exercise of jiu-jitsu, you know, and mentally also it's very different, right? I mean, jiu-jitsu, you're there battling someone, you're locked in a gym that, you know, like, I mean, nowadays they have AC, it's great, but back then it was like hot as hell, you know, so it wasn't very, very pleasant, you know. So, like, I mean, at the end of it, it's like, man, get me out of here, you know. So just going out to the beach and swimming in the ocean, you know, like, feels so great, you know, like, for you to kind of like, you know, like, get all that funky smell off you.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Bruno.
All right.
I have another question, Bruno. So growing up, you know, training at Gracie Barra, who were like some of the, like, your main training partners? Like, maybe people we know, maybe people we wouldn't know.
Yeah, there's a different categories, right? Like, I mean, there were training partners that were like right there with me, you know. That would be like a war. I mean, one day one would win, the other one would be the other. So on that category, would have like Marcio Fitosa, Flavio Almeida, right? Those guys, they're at the head now of Gracie Barra, right? A few guys that kind of like never competed so much, you know. Like, I mean, one guy, Miragaya, Renato Miragaya, the pressure pass. There's a name, which is called Miragaya Pass, and that guy was my training partner, my weight class. We would close divisions together, you know, like, so those guys, man, we would just like go at each other, you know, like, I mean, that would be the kind of training that would be like, okay, like that it's on, you know. It was like a tournament. So there were the training partners that would just beat the shit out of me, you know, like me, like Roleta, Gordo, Mauricio Tinguinha, you know, like that was Sparagar guy, Menino, man, I'm gonna forget some. I mean, you name it, right? Like, I mean, Eduardo Galvão, like man, Bruno Severiano that passed away. Like, I mean, pretty much. I mean, if you get like the World Championships, 96, 97. 98, 99, all that black belt category, you know, like, they were my training partners on a daily basis, right? And then I didn't attack them, you know, and that, which was another thing that I was kind of like very lucky in a way, you know, because you know, we were all training together, right? So I was there, like, I mean, a blue belt, you know, on that year, and then, like, I mean, being put through that on a daily basis, you know. So then, whenever I would go for a tournament, you know, like, and I would go fight another blue purple belt, you know, I mean, without any disrespect to my opponents, I'd be like, man, there's no way that you're gonna offer me something that I haven't been exposed before. Like, I mean, you have a guy there like that, like it's the best in the world at that time, and then he's training, and you survive that beating. That gives you so much confidence. Like, I mean, that, like, when you have someone in front of you, probably never seen that guy before. We don't even have internet back then, but I had zero feed, and that was like so valuable.
Is there, last question, Bruno, and then we'll let you go. Was there any other mentors you had, like, besides Carlinhos, in your jiu-jitsu life that, like, were a big part of your, whether it be a good friend, whether it be, somebody who's like a big brother? Was there anybody else who either influenced you on the mats or off the mats?
Yeah, man, like too many to mention. We were such a tight group of friends. Like like, I mean, I was living 2 blocks from the gym, and there were a lot of other people that were living in walking distance to the gym, right? So we would do everything together. Like, maybe, someone would pass by your house and like knock, hey man, let's go train, and then we would go train, and then we go eat after, then we go surf together, and then we go party, and then we go travel. So like we would do like everything together. It's that kind of friendship that shows at home unannounced, like that knows your mother, like that shows up at doing lunchtime and the mother goes and put another plate for him, like that kind of bond.
Yeah.
And then we rub each other, like, and we try to like influence each other as well, right? Like, I mean, not in the mentor-mentee relationship, but kind of like every time you mess up, like, I mean, you have that kind of friendship to kind of like, hey man, if you mess up, you shouldn't do that, so pretty much, I mean, I could pick a few, but it would be not fair with the ones that I would miss out, because every training partner that I have a chance to spend time with, I'm very grateful for the relationship I had, and the fact that they never hold back on their opinions on my behavior, my attitude, the things I did, the things I didn't, like, I mean, it was really like we were so exposed like to one another, like that we always would have feedback, like, I mean, from the things that we did or we did not. And I kind of tried to, I mean, of course I don't have that close relationship, that I had with my friends, with my students, but I tried to have that same I mean, freedom in a way, like, I mean, to give them what they need to hear, even though sometimes it's not that they want to hear, right? Even though if nowadays it's not politically correct, like, I mean, so let's say a guy comes and he's a bit overweight, I say like, man, you should lose some weight, right away. Even women, like, I mean, I know it's like a mortal sin, like, I mean, to say that, but like, I mean, that's what I'm there for, like, I mean, or sometimes I see them like, I'm not training as much, or like, I mean, they come in and they're smelling cigarette, and they kind of like, like out of breath after a round. I was like, man, you know why? I don't need to tell you that, So I think it's very precious, like, I mean, to have that kind of friendship that can tell you everything. And then I try to be that mentor, like, I mean, if I feel that I could tell something that would have an influence on someone's life, in a positive way, I try to tell them that, and it's something that I learned, like, from my mentors and my friends.
Sorry, Bruno, one last question for one of the students here. Mm-hmm. I have a question. Are there any teaching theories or principles that you value and use? And what are some fundamental aspects of the sport or any sport that you always want to make sure your students take away?
Yeah, I mean, teaching is an art, right? Like, I that's where I'm focused on, really, like, I mean, on the last few years, try to become a better teacher. There's many concepts, many skills, many assets, and but it's like the one that it's not very known and makes a great impact on the way you learn is the following, right? I try to say it in a way that's easy to understand and not necessarily physiologically or anatomically correct. Try to see yourself as having two brains, right? Like, so one is the conscious brain. It's what we all think as brain. And then we have the subconscious brain, right? Like, which we call instinct or third eye or sixth sense or whatever, right? They learn differently and they're both important, right? So when we learn something consciously, is that when we read a book, we watch a YouTube video, when your instructor shows you a technique, right? This is your conscious brain learning, right? And then you know it, right? Like, and then you're kind of like, hey, I know that move. I've seen that before. That move is called so and so. Those are the steps of the technique, right? But then you go and do it and you suck at it, right? That because your subconscious brain doesn't know how to do it at all, right? Our conscious brain learns fast, right? But it sucks at executing, right? So you need to teach your subconscious brain how to do it. And our subconscious brain is a slow learner, right? So you need to let your subconscious brain practice and practice and practice your body, right? Like, so that's why we say like, oh, you should do a technique 1,000 times, right? So like it's your body teaches your subconscious how to do the technique, right? Our muscles don't learn anything, right? Our muscles is just the workhorse. It's our subconscious brain that executes a command, actually gives the command to be executed. But the good thing is like the subconscious brain, it's a fast to act. All right. So that's how we kind of integrate them both. Like our conscious brain learns quick, but you need to teach your subconscious brain how to act quick. And that's where the students fail. They see a technique, they do it once. It's like, I know it. Like, yeah, you know it in a conscious level, but you don't know it in a subconscious level, right? And then you need to train your ass off, like, so your subconscious brain can execute that move without your conscious brain even being aware of it, right? So, like, when you see, like, in a tournament, a guy doing the move and it's so fast, and then sometimes, man, I just act out of instincts. Like, that's not instinct. That's your subconscious brain trained, like, to do that thing. We don't have any instincts. And like, we learn things, right? The instincts it's a bird that, you push it out of the nest and it flies, right? There's no training there. The instincts that we can call it that name if it's easy, but you're not born with it, right? Like, you need to train it, and that's the way you train, right? Like, it's super cool to watch YouTube videos to do all that, but you need to show up to the mat and then repeat the move 1,000 times, until you're able to execute it, right? So that flow, it's great because the exchange of information happens in both ways, So you learn something on YouTube and then you go there and execute it. Your subconscious brain is going to give feedback to your conscious brain, right? It's like, that grip that I saw doesn't work for me because the technique is not being done right. So it's your conscious brain processing that information. It's like, okay, that grip doesn't work for me. Let me change it. And then you try again, so you really need that kind of like exchange of information. You show up to the gym, you train as much as possible, but you got to go home and think about it. Right? You got to put that thinking, okay, I should do this, I should do that, or that technique I'm going to keep, that technique I want, and then you show up to the gym again, and then you're going to have training for your subconscious, but more food for your conscious brain to process. All right. And so that flow is very important. And if you want to read more about it, like there's a book on it. It's called like, I'm going to write here because it's not so easy to it's called Head, Brain Towards Mind. All right. Like, so like, our
Hair, brain towards mind.
The way
I write that down too.
Yeah.
Hair, brain.
And then like, sorry, that was a long answer. Another element there of your question, it's just, that's pretty much related to any sport, right? Like as I get older, I'm getting more focused on the philosophy of things in general, and jiu-jitsu is no different, When I was young, I was very focused on the technical aspect of things, and beginners, they're also very focused on the technical aspect of jiu-jitsu, you know, but and I think that's where they struggle, you know, like, because jiu-jitsu is very hard, you know, and it takes too long for them to learn. So if you stay too focused on the technical aspect of the sport, like, maybe you're going to get frustrated too early, and a lot of people quit because of that, you know. But if you focus on the philosophy of the jiu-jitsu, you know, like, I mean, you learn things so fast, you know, and that gives you like small baby steps for you to reward yourself, you know, like, and that's going to make the journey a lot more pleasant, right? Let me give you a practical example, you know, so things are not so abstract, right? As a beginner, when is the first time that you're going to submit someone? Probably going to take a few years, you know. And then if that's your goal, you know, it's going to take too long, right? But that's not jiu-jitsu, you know. Like, jiu-jitsu is like, I mean, a constant pursuit of improvement, right? It doesn't matter where you are. So, like, let's say if you got someone mounted on you, your jiu-jitsu there is to improve your position, which basically is to escape from the mount, right? If you're mounted on someone, you're still pursuing an improvement of position, you know, like, I mean, which is in terms of improving your mount or getting the submission, right? So those are two extremes, and have everything else between, right? If you're inside someone else's close guard, what is your jiu-jitsu there to get out of the close guard, improving your position, right? If you're playing bottom, what is your jiu-jitsu? To take someone down, so improve your position, and then you pass the guard, you improve your position, you know. So if you keep your goal as improving your position, period, you know, it doesn't matter the absolute outcome of every round, right? So let's say if you're a beginner, you know, like, I mean, then the first day you show at the gym, you tap like 10 times, you know. If the next day you tap 5, you know, like, I mean, you improved, you know, like, I mean, your position. Then the next day you don't tap at all, and then the next day the guys are not passing your guard anymore, you know, like, I mean, so then you're kind of like, I mean, man, I'm getting better at this, you know, like, I mean, because I'm improving, you know. And you can keep that mindset forever, no, that never changes, you know, like, I still use it, right? But it's just different, you know, like, so it's much more detailed, right? So like, when I'm mounted on someone, it's like, okay, how can I improve my mount? You know, I'm not like that, man. I need to choke that guy now. You know, like, that's never the goal, right? It's like, how can I improve my mount? How can I improve my mouth? How can I improve my grip? You know, how can I inflict that more pain on that guy? How can I make this position more uncomfortable for him? You know, like, what kind of opportunities are being offered to me right now? You know, what's going to be the best attack that I could look for? Or even like, you know, you had the armbar on already, you know, like, I mean, maybe I should get a little tighter, maybe I should expose this grip a little more, you know, like, so it is one fundamental goal that it's always in my head when I'm fighting, you know, and that makes my decision-making process a lot easier.
Well, thanks so much, Bruno, for taking the hour to spend with us today, and, you know, talk about your history. You know, we talked about a lot of things, why you got in martial arts, talked about your history, becoming a world champion, becoming a doctor, teaching GSP, BJJ, growing Gracie Barra, like surfing. You know, you have such an interesting story, and you know, it makes me very proud to like be under you and learn from you. And on behalf of everybody, I just want to say thank you for making the time for us.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk about jiu-jitsu. No, this is no effort at all.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
All right.
I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did.
Man.